inevitable.
Looks like we're talking about Shoko today. Now, for those of you who do not know, Shoko is Finn's previous incarnation. She existed around 400 to 500 years prior to the main story, and her life was just as tragic as her death. But before I go over that, I need to talk about something that has been bothering me ever since I began researching this character. Because the question that I've been asking was whether or not she was a ghost or not. And for any other character, I would immediately say yes, because we know where ghosts come from. In order to become a ghost that's stuck in the mortal world, you obviously have to die, but then one of three things have to happen in order for you to stay on the mortal world. The first is that you forget your cause of death, which tends to happen if you died in a particularly tragic way, such as getting killed by your own lover. This is personally what happened to Ghost Princess after her original death. The next way of being stuck on the mortal world is if you have some kind of unfinished business, which obviously people would attribute to Shoko. And the final way is to be kept on the mortal world against your will, such as the case with the couples under the Fight King's jurisdiction. Of course, there are many methods and ways you could stay on the mortal world, but these are the three main ones that we know about. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up in particular is due to the fact that obviously, going by what I just explained, she would be a ghost. The problem is that she is Finn. She is his reincarnation, so how exactly is she haunting a place when her soul is in an entirely different vessel? We also can't use the multiple soul theory due to the fact that in Together Again, we find out that it's the exact same soul being reincarnated every single time. So half of the argument says that she's a ghost and the other half says that she's not. However, I believe that there's a third option, and remember, this is entirely speculation, so take this with a grain of salt. It's possible that due to the fact she has unfinished business, she's actively haunting the area that Finn currently inhabits due to the fact that her soul is still within him, and that all of the ghostly occurrences that we see whenever she appears is entirely due to Finn. A secondary bit of evidence to back this up would be the fact that no one else can see her. In the land of Oo, ghosts may be intangible as well as transparent, but they are still visual. So the fact that only Finn can see her makes me wonder if she's actively tormenting him, not entirely on purpose, but simply to fulfill their remaining business in order to seek atonement. Anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about her life rather than her death. Now, as I mentioned before, Shoko appears around 400 to 500 years prior to the main story. Now, I created a small timeline in my Billy video, so if you guys want to hear more about that, the link will be in the description. Now, as you would imagine, living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland isn't exactly that great for your mental or physical health, and it's clear from her appearance that much like Billy, her parents as well as ancestors were mutated, and this resulted in her looking different than your average human as well. Speaking of parents, hers were absolutely terrible. It's possible that she was lying, however, I find that very unlikely due to the fact that she breaks down after Bubblegum gave her a new arm. So this means her parents actually did end up cutting her arm off in exchange for a decently built computer. Eventually, her parents would abandon her, and this would result in her doing everything she can in order to survive, becoming a vagabond. She would travel for quite some time and would eventually befriend a tiger. We would later learn that this was Jake's past life, which is actually really cool, as it kind of adds on to the fact that no matter what form they end up taking, they almost always end up partnering up one way or another. However, moving on from that, she would eventually become a thief, specifically doing jobs for the Bath Boy gang at least on more than one occasion. She would eventually live as a thief long enough to the point where she'd be considered a pro, to the point where they would even try to get her to steal Princess Bubblegum's amulet, a job that was definitely considered incredibly important. She would take the job, however, the Bath Boy gang leader would threaten her with death if she were to fail. Wanting money as well as not wanting to die, she would immediately try to steal the amulet, screaming and then knocking herself out right outside of its walls in order for them to bring her in as some kind of victim. She would quickly try to gain Princess Bubblegum's trust, however, this would slowly result in a friendship between the two. She would even be partially responsible for the creation of the Gumball Guardians that we are also accustomed to. Surprisingly, Princess Bubblegum would become one of the first individuals that she would ever meet to seem like an upstanding individual, and would serve as an example of Shoko's first experience with a good person. Now, unfortunately, this would make a rift between the two, as she originally came in order to steal the amulet. But after Princess Bubblegum showed her the affection that she wanted her entire life, as well as made her an artificial arm, she immediately broke down crying. Now, although it's pretty short, this is actually a very crucial moment for her character, as it pretty much puts in everything into perspective. Despite the fact that she does in fact have to do the job or she'll be killed, she does second guess herself, showing that even when her life was at stake, she was still considering the moral option. However, believing that it was too late for her, she would say sorry to Princess Bubblegum while still in her tent and then attempt to take the amulet. However, this would not go well for her whatsoever. She would attempt to take the amulet while Princess Bubblegum was sleeping, however, would be caught by one of the Gumball Guardians. She would try to escape, however, would be blasted by the Gumball Guardian and land directly into a large pool of toxic waste. Princess Bubblegum would attempt to save her by getting the Gumball Guardians to fish her out, however, this would result in their hands being melted off. Believing she was dead, Princess Bubblegum would retreat back into her castle, though as it turns out, she did in fact survive, though not for long as she was heavily mutated. Now, I originally wanted to skip this section, however, I believe her mutation and death is absolutely pivotal to her character, so I'm going to go over it here, because the fact is the way she dies is far more tragic and gruesome than a lot of people give it credit for. form. After emerging from the toxic waste, it is clear that her body had changed in many horrifying ways. For one, it seems as though her legs had merged together, creating one long line of flesh which was elongated with the additional mutations. And considering that this is toxic waste we're talking about, the additional growths and lumps throughout her body are most likely cancerous tumors. And considering she also grew an additional arm, it's clear that her bones were also affected by the mutagen as well, being extended and elongated, most likely far past what their natural limits are supposed to be. Something that should also be mentioned is that her skin is either producing a continuous mucus or is in the continuous state of melting. And considering that we know that the waste was in fact corrosive, I honestly believe that her skin actually is continuously melting. Or it could be a combination of both. Regardless, it is clear that this is not painless, as when she erupted from the river, she immediately showed that she was in immense pain. She would manage to drag herself out of the river as well as a couple miles down, where she would die right then and there, with the sun rising and right next to the sapling that would eventually become Finn and Jake's house. The corpse would remain there embedded in branches until Finn would later discover it in the episode The Vault. However, as I mentioned before, this is not the end of her story. Haunted by the fact that she had betrayed one of her only friends as well as died in an incredibly tragic way, she would begin to haunt Finn, appearing in his dreams, nightmares, and even manifesting as illusions at specific locations. This would get to the point where he would begin sleepwalking and specifically destroying the location where her body was actually hidden, showing that what she really just wanted to do was for him to discover her and finally redeem her by returning the amulet, something Finn would finally do after regaining his memories, finally redeeming her after hundreds of years. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. I really liked Shoko's character as well as the episode where they introduced her, so I was really happy to cover her. So if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. If you have an idea for a video, put it down to the comments below. Also, be sure to go down to my other social media platforms. All the links are in the description, as well as the music that I utilize for every single one of these videos. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye.